Merry Christmas, everyone. I hope you enjoy this episode and that you get time to think about the birth of our Savior, Jesus Christ, and the role that He plays in your life. Welcome, everybody. You are going to be so excited that you tuned in today. I have the most amazing woman with me. Her name is Jenedy, and she is a multi-talented girl with a very busy life. So Jenedy Paige was born with two God-given gifts. She's an early riser and she's consistent. She's used her natural abilities to become a professional oil painter for 18 years now and an American Ninja Warrior athlete. So she truly is an art warrior. She believes we all have a divine spark that really does make us capable of achieving anything as long as we're willing to work really, really hard for it. She is the biggest fan of her alma mater, BYU Idaho, and credits herself as the product of a great art education. She is a wife, a mother, a teacher, a runner, and her mom says she struggles with being able to relax. When she's not in her studio or the gym, she loves to be in her kitchen, creating delicious, healthy food for her family. She thanks God every day for carefully leading her down a path she could have never imagined for herself. So welcome, Jenedy.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to have you today. Now, anyone who is watching, now there are people that watch on YouTube. Jenedy is painting while we're doing the podcast, so she truly is a multitasker. I don't think I could focus. So good for you.
Time management, yeah.
Yeah, you got some good time management skills for sure. Okay, so Jenedy, with Christmas approaching very quickly, I would like to talk about your painting Little Lamb. But before we do, you have an experience where a very hard and tough experience that you had a number of years ago that really gave you perspective when you did this painting. So let's go back to that experience where you saw the hand of God moving in that, and then we'll get into your experience with this beautiful painting. And then at the very end, I kind of want to touch on the art ninja, or not the art ninja, but the Ninja Warrior thing, because how does that happen to a lady?
I don't even know.
Who knows, right? I mean, God has plans, and sometimes they're not. So, okay, Jenedy, just take us back to that really hard time, and you can be as vulnerable or not, whatever you want to share with us, where you saw God moving in this time of your life where you did not get the miracle that you were praying for, because most people that I've interviewed get their miracle. But I think it's important for us to recognize that sometimes we don't get the miracle that we're praying for, but God does have a plan still for us. So I'm going to let you talk now, Jenedy.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like I've met so many people in the course of my life that have not gotten what they wanted. And so I am glad that we get to address this, because I love hearing the miracle stories like so much. In fact, well, I'll get to that later. So what happened was my husband and I were married in 2005, and we lived in Southern California. I was working as a painter. He was working as a landscape designer. We had two little boys, and then my husband felt like he needed to go back to school, wanted to go get an MBA. So the only way that we could financially make that happen is if we moved to Arizona, moved in with my parents, and lived with them while he went to school. So that's what we did. And from the day we moved in, my mom was like so nervous. She was just like, "Oh, Jen, like you're bringing your two little boys here, and I have a swimming pool." And I was like, "It's okay, Mom. Like we'll put alarms on the doors, and we'll get a fence around the pool. It will be just fine." And it was fine for a whole year. And then one morning, just kind of a perfect storm arose. And this is one thing that I've learned, is that you can put all the precautions that you want around your pool, but at the end of the day, you have a large body of water in your backyard, and accidents can happen.
So true.
And so September 26th, 2011, I pulled my son out of the swimming pool, and he was then life-flighted to the hospital. And I just like that morning is forever just ingrained in my memory. I can see what I was doing in the kitchen and all the things. I remember the cops, the police come and ask you all these questions. And I remember looking out the window and seeing the paramedics working on my son and just being like, how is how is this actually happening? It just seems so terrible that it can't be real. And then he was life flighted to a hospital and was revived. And I remember driving on the freeway with my husband to the hospital and having no idea what we were going to find when we got there. And then we spent 7 weeks in the hospital.
Wow.
I totally thought he was going to live. Like I remember coming home after like 3 weeks, and he wasn't on life support or anything. He wasn't even intubated. So he was
He was
he was
breathing on his own and
breathing.
everything?
Yeah, his heart was beating, his lungs were functioning.
But was he just
Um,
in a coma?
no, no. What happened? So he was in a coma for a week. They medically induced him
Okay.
in a coma so that he could just have a chance to heal. But then as soon as they um, took him out of the coma and extubated him, so he did have a breathing tube for a week. Um, his body went right into something called sympathetic storms, which is, I guess, not terribly uncommon for near drowning victims, but it's like your fight or flight response, which is the sympathetic nervous system, kind of goes into hyperdrive. And so it kind of looks like a seizure because all of your muscles like flex. And, anyways, this seizure like or storm experience at first lasted like 20 minutes, and then he would just like pass out in exhaustion, and they would bring on like morphine and Valium, and they were trying all these drugs to try to keep him from storming, and nothing could stop it.
How old was he?
um 3.
Oh, he was 3. Okay.
um and then eventually the storms got to be like 48 hours,
Oh,
and his body literally was just couldn't do it anymore. So that's he passed away in November of 2011.
oh, Jenedy, I'm so sorry. That's a
Um,
horrible thing to go through, especially when you thought that he was going to live. Like, did you have any inkling that he might not survive?
well, I mean, sure, like you pull him out of the pool,
Sure.
you
Yeah.
know.
But usually kids
So
die right away from that. They don't live for
right,
weeks.
right. Well, and that's the thing, and the doctor kept telling us like the longer he survives, like the higher his chances are of surviving. And so I just had this hope the whole time that, and the doctors, you realize how much they don't know. Like, I mean, there's lots of cases of sympathetic storming, but they obviously don't know how to do anything about it. You
No,
know,
there's so much we don't know about the
like,
brain,
yeah, like
about
the
the brain
brain
injury.
was
Yeah.
just such a huge question mark. And anyway, so I remember going home after like 3 weeks to like shower, and as I was driving into our neighborhood, I saw this huge bake sale in the corner. All these little girls, I had done like I'd been one of their leaders, youth group leaders at church, and they were doing like a bake sale for my son. And they ran up to me and like, how is he doing? And I was like, oh, he's gonna be okay. Because I honestly thought, I really thought he was gonna be fine. That he was gonna, that the storms would pass. Because the doctors would be like, yeah, in some cases, this is just kind of like a reboot of the system. And then they come to, like they snap out of it, the storms stop, and they're fine.
And
And
of
so I
course, you're
guess,
praying this whole time, right? You're praying that, Heavenly
oh
Father,
my gosh, I didn't stop
let him
praying.
live.
Yeah.
Thank you. He's doing so well. Thank you. Let him live, right? Like,
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, I feel like I have to backtrack a little bit here, and tell you a little bit about my faith base, because
yes, and I forgot to
that,
ask you at the very beginning of the podcast how growing up in your home, what that faith was like, and maybe you can just touch on that right now, and then we can go into where that sort of took you. So you grew up.
yeah.
Just tell me
So
a little bit.
yeah, I grew up all over the mountain west of the United States. Um, Amazing family, incredible parents. I have two brothers and a sister, and we're still to this day super close. But when I was 10 years old, my
What
dad got a
religion did
job.
you grow up in, Jenedy?
I was a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
And you were active throughout your life?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like my mom grew up in a home that was with a lot of abuse and alcoholism. And she just knew what the alternative could look like. And for her, it just finding faith changed her life. So, anyways, when I was 10, my dad got a job we were living in Boise, Idaho. He got a job in Vancouver, Washington. And he flew out to look at homes with my mom. They had like a weekend to find a home, and then we were going to be moving to Vancouver. And it was such a sure thing that my dad was one of the leaders of our congregation, and they like released him from his calling because we were moving. So my parents go and trying to find a house, and they end up attending a church service on Sunday. And the leader of the congregation stands up and gives this message about how to have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And my mom just is filled with the Spirit of the Lord, knows that what this guy is saying is so important. And so she came home from that trip and she shared this as a family home evening lesson. Like we would have like a family night once a week. And it's crazy because you know what, Sheila, we didn't end up moving.
Oh, wow.
Like my dad called and his would-be boss said, hey, we still want you to come, but your job description has changed. And we're actually wanting you in this role now. And my dad didn't want that other role. And so the whole thing fell through. We didn't move. We stayed in our house. And everybody in our church congregation was like, well, Brent, if you didn't want to have that role at church anymore, like you didn't have to pseudo move.
Yeah.
But honestly, to this day, I believe that God orchestrated that whole thing so that my parents could be at this one church service so they could hear this one particular message that would then go on to change the course of my life. So this is the message. My mom sits us down and she asks us kids, what is the guarantee back home to Heavenly Father? And I raised my hand and I was like, get baptized. And my mom said, really great part of the covenant path, a great part of committing yourself to God, but it's not a guarantee. There's a lot of people that get baptized and then later jet. And we're like, oh. And then my brother's like, I know, serve a mission. And my mom was like, also really great, not a guarantee. And you just start to be like, oh my gosh. And she was like, no, but there is a guarantee. She's like, the guarantee is a daily personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And she's like,
is so profound, Jenedy. Like that is the key. Honestly, I have actually said that to my children. I've apologized to them. I said, you guys, I am sorry. When I was raising you, I was wrong. We focused on, all the things you're supposed to focus on, but not as much on a relationship with the Savior. And so She nailed it. Like that's literally what I would tell my kids. When you're raising my grandchildren, you focus on the Savior and how do I have a relationship with him? He loves you. And so do your heavenly parents. It doesn't matter what you do. They love you. And you can check all the boxes.
Right.
But checking the boxes isn't the way to, it's a way to deepen your relationship. But if you think that you have to do those things for them to love you, that's not true. Right? It's deepening the relationship. So your mom nailed it. And that stuck with you at 10 years old.
Yeah. Well, and the question then is how? Well, how do you have a daily personal relationship with Jesus Christ? And she told us to do 3 things every day. And this was part of the message that this church leader gave when she was in Vancouver, Washington. And he was like, we're going to call it the PJs, prayer, journal, scriptures. And you do these 3 things every day. And you can think of it, if you need the acronym to help you remember, like put on your PJs and you're going to do your PJs. So when I first started, it was like before I went to bed at night, I would do those 3 things. And at first it was very kind of simple, mundane. I would write about like my first entry. I was just about to start 6th grade. And I wrote about buying school supplies and trying to figure out how to work a locker because I was going to be in middle school. And you think, this is it, huh? Like, okay. And then I would just read a few verses of scripture, just kind of randomly, whatever I happened to pop open to that night. And then I would say a prayer that was really simple and often repetitive. Like,
you were 11 years old. You were doing it exactly right.
Yeah. yeah, it was just like, help us not to get sick and to have a good day. Like we had
Yeah.
a great day and we're gonna have more good days, you know.
Yeah.
And you think this is it. This is the big guarantee. But the truth is it was the pattern that I was establishing that was so important. Because what happened is eventually I turned 14. And when I turned 14, I started to
Yeah.
encounter problems. And suddenly it wasn't just writing about, you know, eating ramen and jumping on the trampoline. It was like, I have a problem. And then this pattern became so powerful, you know, because in my faith tradition, we talk a lot about prayer and we talk a lot about reading scripture, right? But we don't talk a lot about daily keeping a journal. I mean, it's kind of like one of those one off lessons you have like once a year, you know, but
Sure.
it's not something that's constantly discussed. But for me, the journaling is like imperative because it's in the writing that you realize what it is you need to pray for. It's in the writing that you realize what inspiration you need when you read the scriptures. And
And
it's
it's in the
it's
writing that you can go back and see God moving in your story, right? Like, and that's, yeah,
absolutely,
and that's one of the things I'm trying to
absolutely.
pull out of people in this podcast. And I know you keep an amazing journal. It's not just a rinky dink thing. I mean, it's a piece of artwork because I've seen you post about it. But,
Yeah.
but you know, it's true. And I'm not a super good journal keeper. I was in high school. I go back and read it now. I'm like, this is the most lame thing ever. It's so dumb. I don't even talk about anything but friends. I don't talk about God ever. It was really lame, but whatever. So anyway, so you really took that to heart.
I did. And what was amazing is that I started to see like God's hand in my life so clearly. And that is a powerful thing for a teenager.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I was a super nerdy kid. I loved science and math, and I could see the scientific method in this process. And it was like offering a hypothesis. Does God hear me? Does he answer prayers? Does he really? And then I had proof. I literally had proof in my journal. I had this question, and oh my gosh, here is the answer. And 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 I had no other explanation for how that could all happen except that yes, there is a God, and yes, he knows me, and yes, he answers my prayers. And so it was a very powerful tool and shaped the course of my life. This whole process of praying and reading and writing really has shaped everything that I've become. Even art, I wasn't going to be an artist. I didn't grow up with art talent. I wasn't that kid in fifth grade that was blowing everybody's mind with her drawings. And it was
You
all
even had
because
an interest in art as a kid?
I did. I colored all the time. I still to this day am a huge Crayola fan.
Okay.
But it wasn't like I'm going to be a professional painter. You know what I
Right.
mean? It was just, I just like to color. I would trace coloring books because I wasn't very good at drawing. But then we moved my senior year, and my parents actually gave me the choice to stay because they knew how hard it would be to leave everything behind because I had auditioned for all these choirs and bands and stuff. And so what did I do when I had this huge decision to make as a 17-year-old? I did the pattern. I wrote about it, I prayed about it, I read the scriptures, and then eventually received the revelation that God needed me to move. And I left everything behind, moved to this tiny town. So I was living in Utah, going to a huge school, moved to this rink-dink town in Colorado, and there was an art teacher there who changed my life. And the only reason I even ended up in art classes, because I said I was kind of the nerdy girl. I wanted to be valedictorian. I wanted a full ride to college. So I go to sign up for classes and I said, hey, give me all your AP advanced placement and honors classes. And the counselor looked at me and she was like, honey, we don't really do any of those things here
Oh dear. You're like, what?
because because it was such a small school.
Right.
So I looked at my senior year and my schedule and said, well, I guess I'll take art. And then there at that one little school was a art teacher that was the whole art program, and she had just graduated from college, and she introduced art to me in the form of a journal.
Oh,
And
wow.
and it lit my heart on fire. Instead of writing how you felt, she said, I want you to create images about how you feel. And I fell in love with that process. Now, I wasn't good, So I was doing a lot of just cutting stuff out of magazines and collaging things together. But that was really like the whole thing that drove me to become an artist. And I wouldn't have moved if I hadn't been taught about this powerful tool of seeking a relationship with Christ and learning to hear him and all the things. And so it's all really connected. Like my whole story, everything that's happened is all connected back to this one lesson that my mom taught me, you know.
Wow.
So
That's
then so then fast forward and my son's in the hospital. What do I do the whole 7 weeks? I filled 2 journals. And I
wow.
reminded God of every instance in the scriptures where he had healed somebody, where he had raised somebody from the dead. And I reminded him every day what he was capable of. And then I just waited for him to do what I wanted him to do. And I didn't care how long it took. I was patient. I was like, this is going to take 5 years. That's fine. I know what you can do. We're in it for the long haul. I'll just sit back. This is going to be a marathon and it'll be okay. And so when my son passed away, I, I, I guess one of the best ways I could describe it is I was like the worst kind of disappointed because I knew him. We had spent, I don't know, at this point it would have been like 20, I would spent like 13 years together. I'd been practicing having a relationship with him for 13 years. And then for him to just, it felt like he had abandoned me.
And so you said at one point they moved him from the hospital to hospice care.
I
And that
know.
you said, well, God can still do miracles in hospice. And so you still
That's
knew
right.
at that point. How long was he in hospice?
I want to say just like maybe 2 weeks.
Also, not long. And so during
No,
that time, you had an experience. Even though you didn't get the miracle you wanted, you
right.
had an experience where you knew God was with you. Even, I mean, you probably felt that anyway, didn't you? Like you
I
kind of
sure
had peace.
did. You know what? I actually talk about that. That time in the hospital was so sacred. I really felt flanked by angels. So I will say when you don't get what you want, you feel abandoned by God.
For
But
sure.
I couldn't walk away. I couldn't leave my testimony behind because I knew too much. And
Yeah.
all those nights that he had spent with me in the hospital, I had so many nights where my son was storming and everybody had gone home and it was just me and him. And I felt I felt angels there with me. Like I've wanted to do a painting for a long time of me walking a hospital hall flanked by angels because I literally felt so supported. And maybe it was the prayers of all these people that I know were for sure being offered on my behalf. But
Probably
yeah,
all
yeah,
of that, right?
I go back and I read my journal and he did not leave me comfortless. Of course not. No, I had so much support,
So what did
but I
that feel
didn't
like?
get
So
what I
you're
wanted.
right, but so what did that feel like? So you're in the hospital, your son is storming, you're terrified, and you're praying, I'm assuming. And what did that feel like being flanked by angels? Did it tell me what that felt like? Was that just a feeling of peace, a feeling it's going to be all right?
Well,
Words
I
like what was it?
I'll say there's so when I was walking down the hospital hall, I just felt power. I felt I felt strength to keep going. But then there were other nights, like during the nights where I would just feel love, something like, Jenedy, I'm so sorry. And I'm here with you. I often went to Gethsemane. That's where I went. I thought about Jesus Christ and his night in the garden, and felt him there with me because I really do think that we all will have an opportunity to suffer. I mean, as sad and depressing as that sounds, it's true because it's suffering that teaches us so much and connects us to Jesus Christ in ways like almost nothing else can, you
Yeah,
know?
well, there is sacred in that, right? Like you said, that hospital time was very
Yeah.
sacred. There is sacred in the suffering if we allow that.
Yeah. So during this time, it was all just so unfathomable to me to have a 3-year-old in a hospice facility. That's where they take old people to die. And to have a
Right.
toddler there was just so hard. But one day, we went to go get lunch because unfortunately, I guess you have to eat still. And we just went to some Thai restaurant and gave us a fortune cookie. And I opened this fortune cookie and it said, heroism is endurance for one moment more.
Wow,
And
that's powerful.
yeah, it just made me cry. Because it felt like it, like, I mean, all those nights combined, it felt like a very long time. And I had no idea that, I mean, I guess I still hoped that that meant that my son was going to quote unquote kind of snap out of it, that the storms were going to pass. I think when I got that, I thought, oh, he's going to make it and we're just around the corner. Like I'm going to see this amazing miracle and my son is going to stop storming in hospice care. We're going to go home. It's going to be amazing. um,
Of
but
course.
he got a different kind of release and it was just like 3 days later.
So it was heroism is enduring one moment longer.
Heroism is endurance for one moment more.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's beautiful. And then he passed away
Well,
3 days later.
yeah, and this is the thing about keeping a journal too, is that that was that was an important experience then, but I feel like some experiences they grow exponentially in their importance over time.
Oh, I
And in
agree.
and unless you record it, you will forget, you know?
100% agree.
And so just recently I was going through I actually still go through my journals pretty frequently. I mean, for one reason is because I speak quite often and I still draw upon my journals. But anyways, I was going through and I saw that fortune cookie or that little fortune because I glued it into my journal. And it just made me weep because you can just see so clearly in hindsight how much God was reaching for you. And sometimes I feel when you're in the thick of it, it can really be difficult to really feel and realize how much God is reaching for you because emotions can be so big. But if you keep the record and you go back, you'll just see over and over and over again that he was sending you love notes the whole time.
Yeah, I 100% agree. It's in the looking back where you see the power and the love and all of it,
Right,
right? Like, because sometimes at the time you're just, there's so much stress and emotions going on that you just, you know that he's there, but you don't always see everything in, and when you write it down, then you start seeing step by step, right?
right.
So, well, that's a really difficult experience to have to go through, and I can't even imagine Janity losing a child. Um, and I'm grateful that you were able to see God's hand in that. So, moving forward from that, then you, as an artist, how did it come about painting the little lamb painting, and how did
Mm.
that talk to us a little bit about how your experience helped you understand that painting better?
Yeah, so I went to school to be an illustrator. I thought I was going to be a children's book illustrator
Oh,
because because I was so not confident in my drawing abilities. I thought I can do illustration. I can do cutesy stuff. I mean, to say nothing, I'm not trying to be disparaging to any illustrators out there because it's actually very challenging to stylize anything. But I guess in my immature mind, I thought I can do illustration. But it didn't work out for me because that world turned completely digital and I realized I didn't enjoy doing art on a computer. So I just became a self-proclaimed fine artist. And I kind of made a personal commitment to myself in college that I wasn't going to be a biblical painter.
oh,
Why? Why? Because so many people had done it and so many really, really good painters had done it. And I just felt I didn't have anything to add.
yeah,
I
I
felt,
can see
I
that.
felt like, what could I possibly add to
I
what
feel that same
everybody
thing,
else?
imposter syndrome, right?
Yeah. So this is 2 years after my son has passed away. I have since had um, two more children, actually. um, God gave me back kids really quickly, which was another tender blessing, tender mercy. But, anyways, I got this impression around Christmas time that I should do a nativity painting. And I said, no, thank you.
You're like, no.
I liked listening to your podcast and you were talking about that. Hey, you should do a podcast. No, thanks. I I feel like I tell that to God the first time he asked me to do just about everything. I'm trying to get better at it, but it's just they're always so left field. I'm always just like, nope. So
Right.
we, so, but he's
That's how you
persistent.
know. That's how you know it's from God and not from yourself. Because it's like I would never even have that thought.
I know. So this thought, you should do a nativity painting. No, thank you. And it kept coming and it kept coming. And finally I said, okay, tell you what, I'll just read Luke 2. That's what I'm going to offer to you today. I'm going to read the story.
Good for
And
you.
I think one of the hard things about it was a lot of nativity paintings that I've seen are very complicated. There's a stall and a donkey and Joseph and shepherds and sometimes wise men and camels. And
Yeah.
as as an inadequate artist, I just thought, I can't do all that. But then when I went and read the story, I realized, hey, this is actually way simpler than you've been making this out to be in your head. It's just Mary. It came to pass that Mary brought forth her firstborn son and wrapped him in swaddling clothes and laid him in a manger because there was no room for them in the inn. I was like, oh, well, that's Mary manger baby bands. Okay, I got it.
I can maybe handle
So I can maybe do that. So then I started doing research because a lot of my paintings, this is one thing when you are an illustrator, is you are trained how to do the research for your paintings because it's important. My teacher would be like, if you have to illustrate a pioneer book, if you have to illustrate a Civil War book, if you have to illustrate a Victorian England Charles Dickens book, you better do your homework because if you don't, there's going to be someone expert out there in the world that is going to write you an email and say, you painted this wrong and you did this wrong. And so that was part of
good
my,
advice.
yeah, people love to tell you everything you did bad. So I decided, I learned in college that if you're going to paint something historical, you must do your research. So I start doing research and came across the work of an archaeologist by the name of Jeffrey Chadwick. He is a archaeologist, works for BYU, and he sent me pictures of stone mangers that he had uncovered on archaeological digs from the first century, and they were all made out of limestone. And he said, Jenedy, limestone was their most plentiful resource. Like anything that they could make out of limestone, they did, especially something as simple as like a feeding trough.
Yeah.
Oh, and then he was like, and guess what? They didn't collect and store hay. So the baby like asleep on the hay, wrongo. And I was, okay. Yeah, he said that's why the shepherds were in the fields tending to the flocks is because that's where the grass
So
was.
that's
It
what
grew.
snow in Israel.
It's like
Interesting.
that's
Yeah.
where the grass was. And anyways, so I learned that and think, wow, well, I don't think I've ever seen a painting that I could recall of a baby in a stone manger without any straw, any hay. So the next thing that I did was I researched the swaddling bands and realized that they were a big part of their culture. When a girl became betrothed to be married, she would begin embroidering her swaddling bands. And she would embroider them with symbols of her family line and that of her spouse. So they become this symbol of these two family lines coming
That's
together as
really
one.
beautiful.
So beautiful. And those swaddling bands were then used in the marriage ceremony. The couple's hands would be wrapped with the swaddling bands, and the phrase tie the knot comes from this ancient practice.
Oh,
And
that's
so the swaddling bands are also a symbol of the marriage covenant, and the baby is wrapped in that, which is really beautiful too.
wow. That is.
So so I learned this and then realized, okay, well, what would have been symbols of Mary's heritage? She is of the house of Judah, and the lion is the symbol of Judah. So as a huge C.S. Lewis fan, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, I was so excited to put a lion on his swaddling bands. So I got some linen, I embroidered it. I borrowed my friend's 7-day-old son because I did not want him to be it's like a pet peeve when I see baby Jesus is 6 months old, okay? So I wanted him to be brand new
Right.
and did this photo shoot. It was so sweet because my friend's son happened to be named Luke. So wrapped up baby Luke
Oh, how sweet is
and
that?
I know, so fun. And did this photo shoot, working on the painting. I'm almost done with the painting. And it felt like one night God just kind of hit me over the head. Jendy, you're totally missing the point. It was at night. I was by my easel by myself and I hear this, you're missing the point. And I think, how am I missing the
So this
point?
just popped into your head. And you say here, and it just kind of popped into your head as a thought.
Yeah, I thought, Jenny, you're totally missing the point. And so you say, well, what am I, what, I've learned so much. I learned about the bands and the manger and what am I missing? And I felt this question, when else in his life, Jenedy, will he be wrapped in white linen and placed on a stone? And then all of a sudden, I could see this painting by Karl Bloch of Christ being wrapped and prepared for burial and placed on this huge stone. And I just said, oh my gosh, the very few things that we know about his birth actually foreshadowed his purpose and mortality. God put him on an altar from the very first day. And all I could hear in my head was, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. And I wept because it had only been a couple years that I had buried my firstborn son. And so to see this baby and to see the manger as a kind of an altar, I just wept. I just wept at my easel because I began to understand on a new level how much God loved us and to realize all that he really did offer in giving us his son. And it was also so beautiful because I felt God commiserating with me in my own loss as we kind of connected as grieving parents in a way.
That's beautiful.
And yeah, so up to that point, I had never even sold a print of any of my art. I had only just sold originals and done a lot of commission paintings for families and things. And I was struggling for money one Christmas because we had bought our first home. And I had to, when you're an adult, you have to spend money on the blinds and ceiling fans.
Yeah, adulting is
So,
really not that fun.
yeah, so while I had just done this painting for my family,
Now, the
I was
paintings that you had done before, were they religious paintings or just whatever people wanted you to paint, you painted?
I would call them, remember how I said I fell in love with art because of an art journal? They were basically art journal pages, but on canvas. So whatever I was struggling with mostly. So they were very spiritually based, but they just weren't biblical.
Okay.
So, they were spiritual, just not biblical. Um, but anyways, I told my mom I don't have any money for Christmas. And she said, well, Jenedy, why don't you make prints of your baby Jesus painting and why don't you sell that painting that you made? And I was like, you're my mom. I, who who else is gonna want this?
Who actually is a very ingenious lady, by the way.
It's just it's really hard as an artist to sell your work because it's so highly personal and I don't know, I think most artists are pretty like it's just hard to think super highly of it, you know?
Yeah, you're like, I love it,
And
but is anybody else even going to care?
yeah, yeah. But I prayed about it. I was like, okay, God, my mom said I should do this. And God's like, yeah, listen to your mother.
As he often
My
does.
mom loves it when he does that. Yeah.
We
Um,
all do. We actually all do, secretly.
yeah. So I just made some prints, had no idea what I was doing, put them on a Facebook page and just said, hey, if you guys want one of these, this is the story, this is what I learned. And then I was just shocked because people spread it all over. And it's made
Wow.
me really appreciate when people share things, you know,
Yeah.
because you realize that the power that actually has.
And this was a positive share. Like people are sharing,
Yeah.
I love this. This is Jesus. This is the story. Like it was a beautiful thing to share. They weren't sharing negativity, they were sharing light. And
Yeah.
light just spreads, right?
Well, and then next thing, I mean, now it's been 10 years. And that painting, that a print of that painting has been to Saudi Arabia, Australia, Ireland, the UK, South Africa. Literally, I have a board downstairs in the basement of my studio, and we're gonna put a pin like all the places this painting has gone.
I
And
love that.
it was like the gift that God gave me that just continues to keep giving.
Oh, well, so
And
when we're
yeah,
done, I want you to send me a picture of that painting and I will post it when I post about the episode because
okay.
people want to be able to see that. So that's wow. So the
Yeah,
Lord was like, hey, yeah, you should do that.
I know. I had no idea that, you know, 10 years later, I would still be just sending them all over the place. And that's
Wow.
one thing as an artist is you don't know when you're painting it, the life that you're painting is going to have. You have no idea. I
Right.
had one artist explain it like the parable of the mustard seed, that you plant this little seed of faith and you have no idea what birds are going to nest in its branches. And that has definitely been the case for all of my art, for sure.
Wow. And now little
Yeah,
Luke from the painting is 10 years old.
I know. I know. And he'll, he still gets comments when he goes to church on Sunday. Oh, like his mom will still talk about, and that's the funny thing too is, none of us knew. His mom didn't know what she was signing up for. She didn't know that the painting would end up all over the world and that it would be, it's been on a couple news or TV or like our church put it on one of their worldwide broadcasts, and
Yeah.
he's literally been all over the world now.
That
Yeah.
is awesome. It's so beautiful to be able for you to be able to see the hand of God moving in your son in this painting, like and how they kind of came together, right? Like the Lord knew that He was going to take your sweet boy. He knew that was going to happen, and He already had a plan. And I believe that 100% because I've seen it in my life. He had a plan, identity. He knew that He wanted you to be happy and have joy, and it's been beautiful. So tell me now,
Yeah.
though, if we want to shift gears just a tiny bit for a minute, American Ninja Warrior, how does that even happen when you're an artist and a mom of young kids? And just give me a little bit of that and where you saw God moving that, because I'm sure that was something that He planted on your heart, because I don't think that's something you were thinking you'd ever do.
I know.
And how is that? And how has that benefited your life?
Okay, so I talked about this daily personal relationship, and I'm just going to give this disclaimer, this bit of warning for all those out there that feel like they might want to embark on this relationship. Do know that when you learn how to hear Him, because that's exactly what this process is it's training your spiritual ears to hear.
Right.
And once you learn how to hear, He is going to give you things to do. And those things are always not going to be things that you want to do. Most of the time, they're going to be things that scare you, that take you out of your comfort zone. Why? Because God wants us to grow.
Right.
So,
And growing is hard.
so my husband and I watched this show, and that was basically my only qualification for applying for the show the first time. And I had a little, so my athletic journey, I was not an athlete whatsoever growing up. Well, I was on a competitive jump rope team in fifth grade. Okay, so I'll give you that. And then I was a casual runner. I was, I did half of a season of cross country in high school and I quit the team halfway through because I barfed at the end of races and I didn't think that was fun.
Good
So
reason.
but I enjoyed running, which I know is probably weird, but I enjoyed running. So I just would run for fun. So I ran through all of my pregnancies. And then after my son passed away, running took on a whole other level because it was like you could run and you could go like this. Like you could run and you could like take all this pain and hurt that you have and you could just like put it into the road, you know?
Yeah, it
And
becomes
so
very therapeutic.
yeah, I had so many like crying running experiences. And I'm sure anybody that may have seen me in Tucson, Arizona was like, what is wrong with that girl? But anyways, so that was basically my athletic practice. And then I moved to Utah and my little brother lives next door to me. And he invited me to go indoor rock climbing with him one day at a local gym. It was actually called bouldering because you don't use a rope. It's just, you only climb like 13 feet. And if you fall, you just fall on a mat. And I went with him and these routes in the climbing gym are called problems. And I just was really tickled by the fact that you could go face your problems at the bouldering gym. And it was very therapeutic, just like the running. And I also love that it was mental and physical. You have to solve the problem. You have to figure out how
Yeah.
to put your body to get up the wall. So I start climbing, and I'm literally 3 months into this climbing journey, which for anyone out there that's a climber, you know how infantile that is. Most climbers are something like, oh yeah, I've been climbing for 25 years, or since like literally so many climbers have been in it for the long haul. So I was this brand new climber, and I'm at the gym, and I have a thought: you should apply for American Ninja Warrior.
Were you like, what? That is
Yeah,
the craziest thing I've ever
I
thought.
was
I am
like, nope. That was a weird thought. But then,
That's how you know it was from God, right? Because if
yeah,
it's crazy, it's from the Lord. I mean,
no,
crazy in a
yeah,
good way, right? Because you're
yeah,
like, no, I would never think
yeah,
that on my
never.
own.
So left field, yeah. So I say no, thank you, and keep climbing. And that, but then every time I went to climb, it would come back. And this is how you also know it's God, is he's so persistent. He gives you he'll just keep showing up. He'll give you so many chances. I feel like
Yeah.
we all know what that feels like to fight something like that.
Because he knows it's
So,
good for us in the end, even though we're like, yeah, we're not doing that.
yeah. He can see the whole story, and
Right?
this is one thing that I've realized as an artist. Thankfully my paintings are inanimate objects, so they can't fight me, but I know where I'm taking this painting. And sometimes the painting looks really rough, and sometimes I have to scrape it, and sometimes I do things that don't make sense, perhaps if you're the painting, but I know where it's going, and God knows the end from the beginning, and he knows where he wants to take us. And so, yeah, he's going to keep telling us because he knows where he wants to take us. So I hear I have this feeling repeatedly. And so one day I'm praying. I actually was praying in my car. I kind of give this
I
advice
think
to
we all do
young
that, don't
young
we?
young moms. If you're a young mom, just give yourself an extra 5 minutes in your car, and it can be good. So I
Yeah.
pray in my car. Okay, God, I never thought we were going to have this conversation. I mean, we've been friends for a long time now, but do you do you want me to apply to American Ninja Warrior? Yes. Why? Oh, no. And
Don't ask the question.
once he told me yes, I had to do it because
That's the problem. When you ask and you get the answer and you can't deny it, dang
you
it,
gotta
then you
go.
have to do it.
It's go time. Yep. So then I was like, well, okay. I've never been
You're
a
like,
ninja.
what does that even look like?
What does what look like? An
And
application?
applying for American Ninja Warrior, you're just like, I
Yeah.
don't even know what you're talking about.
It's actually not that hard. You just have to make a submission video of you doing something cool, like hopefully ninja related, and
Even
tell
that would
your
be intimidating for
yeah,
me.
and then tell your story. Say something about you. And thankfully, I have a heartbreaking story. Um, and then you fill out, basically write all these essays about your life, and that's all you have to do. So I didn't have a ninja gym close to me at the time. I just went to a trampoline park where kids have birthday parties
Oh, yes.
to film my application video the first time. And I remember going to the start of this course, and I had hired somebody to make the film, and he was a very direct person. So he was like, "Okay, Jenedy, I need you to start here. You're going to run up the quintuple steps. You're going to go across the running log. You're going to go up the jumping spider, and then you're going to go across the double steps, and then we're going to do it all in one take." And I was thinking, I've never done this before, but okay. So I go over to the start, and all of a sudden I felt my son, and I felt him say, "Let's do this, Mom."
Oh, Jenedy, that's
And
so
then
beautiful.
and then
So
it
then
was
you
so
just start
beautiful.
crying?
Well, then what happens is, like, any hesitation that you have is gone. Any fear to draw back just leaves, because you know that you've got an angel boy in your corner. And so you just run, you just go. And I did it. I ran across the quintuple steps and across the spinning log and through the jumping spider and across the double steps, and I was down the other side. And I was amazed that I just did it. And I looked at my husband and I said, "I have never done that before." And he was like, "I know. That's
So
what
you
you
did it in
have."
one take.
Yeah, just go, and just did
Oh,
it. And
wow.
maybe I could be a ninja. I don't know. So that was my application video, but I will never forget, like, feeling my son there at the start. And I feel, one thing I haven't mentioned is my son's name. So I named my son Victory Morgan,
Oh, wow.
because my husband's name is Victor, and he was named after his father, Randall. And so my husband's name is Randall Victor, and so he always went by Victor because his dad was Randall. And so we were going to carry this tradition, and so we named our son Victory Morgan. We called him Morgan, but his first name was Victory. And I named him Victory because even though my husband's name is Victor, I always called him Victory. It was just his, I guess, cute name, whatever. So to have a son pass away whose name is Victory, like his headstone just says Victory in huge letters on the back of it. And that's like an empowering thing because I know I have this cheerleader on the other side, and I've felt him so much through this whole ninja journey. And I've asked myself so many times, why did God ask me to do this? And here I am 6 years later, and I still don't know all the reasons, but I can tell you I've now competed on 5 seasons of American Ninja Warrior. I've competed at the Ultimate Ninja Athlete Association World Series Finals. I'm a coach. I've been coaching for 2.5 years.
Like you have so much time to do that.
And he literally has changed me through it. It's funny because guess what? So I originally thought, oh, I know why he's asking me. Because I'm going to go on national television and I'm going to be a missionary. I'm going to go on NBC and I'm going to say how I was so broken. And the only answer that I possibly have is that God put me back together. And so I thought that's why I was doing this. And then I'm sorry, I don't know why. Can you hear that?
Yeah, no, I can't hear anything. It sounds perfect.
Okay, good. Well, cut that out. Okay. So I was asking myself, why is God asking me to do this? And I thought it was to be a missionary. Well, I go compete the first season. I do really well. For those that aren't aware of this sport or TV show, you have 5 obstacles and then the warped wall and a buzzer. And and very few people make it through the 5 obstacles. Okay. So my first time I made it to the 4th obstacle as a total rookie. I'd been training for like 3 months. Wow. And I thought I did good enough. They're going to air my episode. I'm going to share my story. And that's why God asked me to do this. Well, I get home and everybody's like, when do we get to watch you on TV, Jenedy? And I was like, I don't know. I haven't heard yet from the producers, but I'll let you know. And then I get this really nice email that says, you did amazing your rookie season, but you competed with too many celebrities and we don't have time for you on primetime.
Oh, okay. Thanks. That was worth it.
And then you're like, okay, God, wait, what? Nobody's going to see this. What? Why did we even do this? How does this even matter? And so you go back to the drawing board, right? You're like, well, so God brought me here. So then you pray and you're like, okay, well, what are we supposed to do now? And God says, well, Jenedy, you've only been training for 3 months. What if you trained for a whole year?
And at this point, how old are your kids?
Well, let's see. 4, 6, and 8.
So they were still little.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I was 34. So I thought, well, I'd probably get better if I kept training. So I guess I'll just keep showing up. So I had started taking ninja classes when I applied because I thought, I guess I should take some classes if I'm going to be on the show.
And that's the work really.
And at the time, you know who takes ninja classes? Teenage boys. And do you
great.
know what an idiot you feel like as a mom, a 34-year-old mom showing up to take ninja classes with teenage boys? So dumb. So
yeah,
dumb.
I bet you felt
anyways, but I kept showing up and I repeated the process. And again, they told me, yeah, we're not going to air you and we're not going to air you and we're not going to air you. And then last year it was my 4th season. And I thought, this is it. I'm going to get, and if you make it to the top and you hit a buzzer, they have to air you. And so I thought, I'm going to go get a buzzer. I'm going to do this for my son. It's going to be amazing. They'll have to air it. They'll have to share my testimony. And they didn't. And so after 4 tries, I got back to my studio and it is hard.
Oh,
it
yeah.
is a lot, like emotionally,
Physically.
physically,
So did you get the
spiritually.
buzzer in your first season?
No, no, I didn't. And they didn't air my run. And I got home. And it's because so much of it lies on chance. Like, you don't know what you're going to have to do, and you don't know what to train for. And a lot of times you're trying something for the very first time on national television with TV cameras and the whole thing. And you have to do it perfectly the first try, and you don't get any redos.
Right.
And
That's
and
terrifying.
so that's challenging, right?
Yeah.
So after the fourth try of it not happening, I came home. I walked into my studio. I was kind of mad, and I kind of said to God, "Why are we still doing this?" And then
Which is okay.
it was so
It's
beautiful
okay to get
because
sassy with God once in a while. He
I
gets it.
am so sassy sometimes, but it's because we have a real relationship. You know, I tell people that, like,
Yeah.
if you think about your relationship with God, is it like people you see at the grocery store? How are you doing? Good, good. I'm good. Catch you later. I mean, are your prayers like that? Or are your prayers like talking to your best friend? And
Right.
I think he would rather us be real and mad than nice and fake, you know?
Absolutely.
So I'm real. Anyways, he tells me when I ask him why we're still doing this, he says, Jenedy, wait, did you think this was about TV? Do you think I care about NBC?
You're like, but I
Jenedy, look at you. You are a totally different person than you were 5 years ago. I've literally changed you through this whole thing. And I care so much more about the development of a person than I do about TV. And then you're like, oh yeah, I guess you're right.
do. Dang it.
Because this is one thing that I've learned through this experience is how we as humans value television.
Right.
It's kind of sad, honestly, but we're all obsessed with TV and media and movies and all that.
And our 10 seconds of fame and whatever,
And
right?
yeah, it's so dumb. But anyways,
That's because we're human. It's okay. It's okay. Jenny, you're normal. That's a good thing.
so anyways, then this season I competed just in September. It was my fifth season. And they always film in the spring. It's always March, around March through April. For
And then
some
they air it
reason,
in September?
then they air it in June.
Oh, in
And
June.
for some reason this year, this is the first time I think it's ever happened. They filmed in September.
Oh.
And the day that I competed was September 26th, which was the day that my son fell in the swimming pool.
Oh, dear.
And I just remember thinking, that is such a weird coincidence. There's 364 other days that I could be running the course, and why am I running it on this day, you know? Anyways, I can't tell you how I did, but I will tell you this. They called me on November 12th, which was the day that my son passed away,
Oh, dear.
to tell me that I am going to be aired on the next season. So, come June 2025, I will actually be on the TV show American Ninja Warrior.
Yeah, and those are not coincidences that on those 2 dates that were so
I
special to you and
I
Victory.
know. I
Yeah, the Lord was
know.
just like, Jenedy, see, He is with you. And this isn't a coincidence that these are filmed and aired on, or, like, yeah.
And then it's also so beautiful too, because one thing I haven't mentioned is that my art and my ninja life have started to collide because God's put me on this because he made me a ninja. I met all of these really amazing humans because everybody that's competed on American Ninja Warrior is not only incredibly strong but has been through hell and back. And then he inspired me. I was at a ninja competition. He said, "Hey, I want you to ask to paint this woman." And the person he wanted me to paint is kind of a celebrity here in the US. She's like in movies. She's on billboards. Her name's Jessie Graff. She's a professional stunt woman, is what she is. And
Wow.
so I asked her, "Hey, Jessie, I'm actually a better artist than I am a ninja, and maybe someday I could paint your portrait." Which is another one of those things that God asks you to do, and you're like, okay, it's going to be awkward, but let's go for it.
Yeah.
And she said yes. And now, guess what? Next year, on September 26th, 2025, I am hosting a Strong Woman conference in Sandy, Utah.
Oh, I love that.
And
I just looked at your video about it and I was just like, we were going to ask you about it, the Strong Woman Conference, right? Like,
it's called the Strong Woman Experience
oh, right.
because I'm doing like 24 paintings. The women are going to come and share their stories in person with the original art, but you couldn't have a Strong Women conference where you just sit.
Right.
So so in the morning it's going to be like the sit down, and the afternoon is going to be the experience part of the Strong Women Experience, where we're
Except
going
for
to,
maybe your 80 or 90-year-old lady that you have on there. She might not want to do
oh,
the physical part.
she's invited. She could come. I mean, and it's not all physical strength, right?
Right.
So the
Right.
experience is going to be everything from meditation, breathing. I'm going to teach a journaling class, nutrition,
I love it.
mental health. Of course, there's going to be ninja obstacles, jujitsu,
Sure.
aerial silks. So it's going to be a broad, because strength looks different on different people, and I don't know why, but I feel this is something God wants me to draw attention to. So
So, if people want to be part of this experience,
yes.
how do they?
So you can go to strongwomanexperience.com. You can go
Okay.
to my Instagram, Jenedy Paige. There's also Strong Woman Experience on Instagram. And yeah, find out. There's all the information on there. So,
That is awesome. And if people want to buy one of your paintings, where do they go?
jenedypaige.com.
And they're all
Yeah,
there.
they're all
And
there.
you have prints and you have canvases and you have all the things, all the sizes
Yeah.
that people could want.
You could even buy an original oil painting if you wanted to. I mean, you can get whatever you want on there.
That's fantastic. So
Yeah,
jenedypage.com.
correct. And my name, Jenedy, sometimes hard, Paige.
Love it. Love it. Love it. So last final question, Jenedy. Why do you think it's important to recognize the hand of God in your life? You've kind of touched on it, but just kind of do a little wrap up for me.
It's because we have to remember. It's so easy to forget. This is the pattern we see in scripture over and over again. People will have incredible experiences or incredible parents or whatever, and then something happens and they either get wealthy or, I don't know, they forget. And whenever you forget God, it's all downhill from there. And I think we live in I feel like our world, our epidemic is distraction,
Absolutely.
because we have ultimate cosmic power in the palm of our hands. And it's so hard to choose the right. We have everything, and we have to choose the right thing with our time. And so I feel taking the time every day to just spend a little time remembering what God has done for you, it keeps you focused. It helps you avoid distraction, and it keeps you grateful. So I tell my kids all the time that remembering him is the most important thing that they can do every day.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much, Jenedy. This has been such a joy chatting with you today. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, Sheila. I love what you're doing.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening. If you have an experience where you have seen the hand of God or your higher power in your life, I want to hear about it. Please send an email to Sheila@beyondcoincidence.com. Have a great day.